Hey, thank you for joining us for another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. It's a little different this time around because Andy Kahn, who's usually here with me, he is not. He's out of town. But joining me are two people from Crime Stoppers. Sydney, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sydney Zuiker. I am the Senior Director of Programs and Special Projects at Crime Stoppers, and I brought Clara with me today.
Hi, I'm Clara Guidry, and I'm an education specialist for Safe Community and Safe School Institute with Crime Stoppers.
You all are working on looking at crimes at universities. Tell me about that, Sydney.
We are. So, we launched our Glenda Gordy Research Center, which really focuses on analyzing crime trends kind of across the board, for all kinds of community type of crimes. We look at offense occurrences and also cases filed. So we watch all these things that you guys talk about here on Breaking Bond kind of move through the court system. But over the past couple of years, we've seen really a need for specific crime dashboards and a clear understanding of crime on university campuses. This year, we saw really tragic homicides happen on local campuses. We saw homicide suicides, and we've had universities ask us for kind of some crime data. So instead of us just compiling each time it's asked for us, we're now making that publicly available to anyone who's interested. We'll start with a select number of universities. A lot of the University of Houston systems, their law enforcement has submitted data to us that we will put on a dashboard that you can toggle. You can show year that you want to look at the crime. You can look at the kinds of crime. You can look at specific university campuses. We're also going to include Texas A&M, University of Texas. Hook 'em. We got it this week. I'm just saying. But yeah, we find it really important. This population of people is one that is really at an increased risk. It's the age, it's the kind of socialization, it's the
You feel like you're in a bubble in a way
and
kind of university.
Yes, and a lot of these kids don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, which is where all of your executive functions lie. So Their reasoning is not fully intact. And also, they're vulnerable. There's a bunch of kids who are away from home, often for the first time, experimenting and having all kinds of fun with their friends. And there's just a lot of opportunity for victimization. So what we like to do is we kind of start with our research center where we go in and we make that data really easily accessible. And then all the rest of our programs at Crime Stoppers utilize that data to determine what kind of education we need and how we tailor our education for respective populations. So Clara gets to be kind of on the receiving end of the data that we've presented as an education specialist. So Clara, talk to us a little bit about your role, what you do.
So a lot of what I do, I average maybe 10 to 15 schools per week, and we teach kiddos ages pre-K through 12th grade about like bully prevention, substance use, how to stay safe online, even their mental health and how social media can affect their mental health. So in a lot of those ways, we like to use stats when talking to them because it kind of gives them an idea of how dangerous something is or how important something is. That's why it's so important for our research center, because we like to use some of that data and put it in our PowerPoints for the kiddos so they can understand how much is happening, what is the percentages of, for example, how much does a kid utilize their phone every single day, and how does that affect their mental health? So that's just a prime example of kind of the stats we do, but we also do like stats with crime when we talk about human trafficking or online victimization. And so it's really good just to overall educate the community, especially the kiddos, with those stats. And next year...
Yeah, so I think that this is what Clara's saying is important, because when we're looking at school age kids, we're really preparing them to be adults, and kind of the first opportunity to be an adult is at college and university. So we want to know, what are they going to face when they enter that first, level of adulthood, I guess, young adulthood.
Or even independence, too.
Right, yeah, right.
Independence.
Yeah, away from mom and dad.
Yeah.
Do what you want to.
So, through our Safe School Institute, we've been educating students for many years, since 1997. We've been in schools talking about, starting with our tip line, and then in 2013, we started talking about all these prevention topics that Claire is talking about.
Well, and look at all the things you started in 1997. think of all of the things that have changed. In 1997, everybody wasn't walking around with a phone. There wasn't really this big internet thing where you could go online and look up anything you want to at any time. None of that even existed.
So, you know, our team has done a lot of research over the years and could tell you, you know, through others' research and even anecdotally what we feel is happening, but adding in this research center that not only can look at, and we've spent a lot of time looking even at safety on elementary, middle, and high school campuses, but now university campuses, we can really tailor our education to what specifically is needed. What is the data saying? How do we provide further education? So in 2025, we just announced at our gala in October, the biggest feat that we've ever before. But we're jumping into a year where we have a mission to educate 1 million students at the cost of $1 per child. We fully funded that program, but in 2025, we will work as hard as we can to make sure that every student in Houston and across Texas has access to safety education. We will educate about 250 students in person, and then the other 250,000 students in person, and then
going
to them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, our education is all across Texas, and then the other 750,000 students will be educated through digital means. So we've worked all year long to prepare video resources and interactive resources that you can download, and family guides where parents and students can talk collectively about some hard topics. And so our mission is to make safety a really accessible thing.
And you're targeting the kids, not really so much, I'll tell your parents, or your parents can tell you. You're kind of going right to the source. Let me tell you what you need to know about being safe.
Because they're facing so much. And we want them, when they go off to college, to know how to handle particularly dangerous situations, or how to keep themselves from becoming victims of crime. And then later on in adulthood, we're building resiliency. Resiliency is really one of the biggest things that we push. We empower people to advocate for themselves and their safety. So I think it's going to be a really great year.
You know what is surprising to me sometimes? I'll read these reports about how younger people are also vulnerable to these scams online, and you would think, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, you grew up with this, so you should know, but that's not the case. I mean, young people can still fall victim to a lot of the scam stuff that goes on.
Well, even a lot of it is like on Roblox or like the video games. Like even there, they're trying to see like, oh, I'll give you this amount of Roblox if you give me your personal information.
Yeah.
And in a kid's mind, they're just excited. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get these Robux for my game. Not really necessarily thinking about the repercussions of maybe giving out personal information. So even we're seeing a very high increase in that
and then even like the introduction of AI and the way that AI plays a role in making these scams even more realistic has been something that we've had to navigate across all of our programming, whether it be for students or even elderly, and everything in between. I know we're talking a lot about students and college students in particular today, but AI needs just a couple of seconds of your voice or of your picture to generate a video that looks and sounds just like you, or generate a phone call that sounds just like you. And we've even had people on our team who have fallen victim or nearly fallen victim to phone call scams of people that they think are their parents, and it turns out it's really not. So teaching kids about these things and teaching kids how to navigate these emerging technologies is a huge focus for us.
I think there's a big fear with the whole AI thing, because you it is so good. You wonder, is it going to get to the point where who's going to know? How am I going to know if it's real, if it's AI? I mean, what do I look for?
Yeah, and that's been a big discussion when it comes to social media and what is appearing on especially young people's feeds, but really anybody's feed, and how to decipher if this is AI generated or if this is original content. And then you get into, if you dig a little bit deeper into the psychology of it, when you're comparing your regular life to an AI generated life and how that affects your mental health.
And it's almost what I've noticed too, like, with in my feed, I'll see something, and a couple of times, I'm going to share this, and I'm not thinking at the moment. There was one where this guy's on a ship, and he's like holding this little polar bear, and it's like, oh,
I know,
you know, and then I post that, and then 6 people. That's AI. That's AI. And then when I look at it and I really think about it, well, of course it is.
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes if it's like too cute or too perfect, or you're just too, look at that, it's not real.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, we're excited for our big year next year. I do want to just give a little bit of information about what will be included in these university dashboards. So we'll include information about homicides on university campuses, sexual related offenses, which will have multiple different things that are included in that, weapons offenses on school campuses, human trafficking, theft is a huge one on school campuses, drug violations, and aggravated assault for now.
The one thing too that I like what you all do is it's very factual. You're basically saying, here are the stats, here's the crimes that have been reported. You're not telling anybody, well, be scared to death, or don't do this or don't do that. It's like, here's the information. You decide what you're going to do with that information.
Here's the numbers. And I think one of the really good things is that it's very accessible.
Yeah.
You can just, if you hop on a phone or a dashboard computer, it's right there in your hands. So I think that's one of the very good things about the research center and what we do is because it's accessible to anybody.
I so appreciate you saying that. That was a big mission of ours, was to make it really easy to understand for someone that doesn't have any background in criminal justice, which I think is what's been great about this show, is that you guys have talked about a really intricate element of the criminal justice system and made it something that is pretty mainstream now for people to understand and talk about.
Well, and with the jobs that we do, you learn a lot about the criminal justice system if you didn't already know about it.
Right.
But the average person out there, all they really know is maybe what they've seen in a crime scene show. They don't know the difference between being a bond and probation, and it doesn't mean anything to them because it's not really part of their life. They haven't had to deal with it, so they don't know.
But you know, I appreciate anyone. This show, lots of the work that we do at Crime Stoppers, we've partnered with lots of people over the years to make the criminal justice system more understandable and accessible for everyone. And so I can't be on the show without talking about what we have coming up for our legislative agenda next session. So our legislative session's coming up in February really, but in 2025, and there are many things that are relevant to this breaking bond world that we'll be looking to get legislation passed on. If you remember back to the past couple of legislative sessions, we've pushed for kind of more bond regulations. We've gotten PR bonds made inaccessible for violent offenses.
That made a huge difference. I mean, we were seeing people that were basically getting a PR bond for aggravated assault. I mean, for a violent offense.
And we've seen a drastic decrease in the number of repeat violent offenders that we've seen in Harris County, at least. So the big one that I think will be really interesting to watch and that we're pushing really hard for is a 48-hour hold for parolees who are charged with a secondary felony. We've had several cases that we've talked about even here on Breaking Bond where someone who's on parole is arrested maybe for a homicide. They are kept in the jail for 12 hours or less and released on bond before the parole division at TDCJ can even issue that parole warrant.
A blue warrant. And many times they do. It's just
in most cases
happens.
They do.
The defendant is already gone, has already posted bond, and so nothing can be done. But that's going to make a big difference.
So what this 48-hour hold will do is require local jurisdictions to hold that parolee for 48 hours to allow that warrant to be issued by the parole division and for parole to decide if they're going to come and arrest that individual. Right. If not, after 48 hours, that parolee would be eligible to be released on bond.
And I think everyone would agree it is up to parole to make that decision. If someone's on parole, they're basically serving the remainder of their sentence in society. And parole could say, hey, this is the third time you violated, we're gonna put you back in prison, or they can put them in one of these facilities for 30 days, 60 days. But yeah, in my opinion, parole should be the one that makes the ultimate decision what should happen to that defendant.
It's even, in my opinion, an unnecessary use of state funds
Yeah.
to have someone in a local facility. Parole's getting that warrant in the time that they're given to do so, and usually even faster. And then that person's released from the local county jail. And now parole has to decide, are we extending resources to go
get
find
them
them when we're already short-staffed?
Right.
So I think it could kind of clean up a lot of that, make our streets a lot safer, and really save some resources.
Yeah. The thing that I still just cannot wrap my head around is how you can be on probation and be out on bond at the same time. Because everybody that's on probation, what's one of the things that they tell you? Do not break the law. Do not pick up a new criminal charge. Well, you pick up a new criminal charge because you're out on bond on that charge. The thing with probation too, that when it's deferred, a lot of times, if you do something, the judge could bring you in and sentence you to the maximum that you faced. How often does that really happen? I don't think it ever.
I feel the same about parole. Parole. I mean, one of the conditions of your probation or parole is that you can't commit another crime.
Right. Yeah.
I feel the exact same.
You go back to, there was a time when if you were on parole or probation and you got a new criminal offense, something was going to happen to you.
Right.
You were going to end up behind bars.
Right. And it really gets under my skin, the few occasions where we've seen someone on parole, probation, and bond all at the same time. 3.
Right, yeah.
Or multiple ankle monitors. That's another one that's always frustrating.
Yeah. And the legislature is kind of the way to go to prevent some of this stuff.
Yeah, and we've seen the success in that, so we'll be very interested in pushing that piece of legislation forward. There's many other victim-centered pieces of legislation that we'll be looking at, some around sex offenders that, we've had some cases also on this show that we've talked about. So you can always go to our website, crime-stoppers.org, to track legislation. We'll have an entire legislative page in the new year where we'll show, once bills start getting filed and things really get moving, we'll track those bills on our website.
And I'll tell people, it does make a difference if you contact
absolutely
your state representative, your state senator, and say, hey, this is something that I want to see passed. This is something I want to see happen. It makes a difference.
Well, and in the House, you can sign up in support of a bill virtually. So that's kind of as easy as it gets to show, especially on the record, that you're in support or against something, if you'd like to be against something.
Let's go back to the university stuff for a minute. When are you going to kind of have that? When can people start seeing that?
So we're doing our first initial sneak peek to a select number of stakeholders who've really helped us to kind of see what their take is on it in just a couple weeks in December, and then it should be out there for the public in January.
You have so many things already. Tell people about all the different kind of dashboards and things that they can access.
So currently we have several felony level crimes that have dashboards. So we have a dashboard for homicide, one for sexual offenses, weapons violations, aggravated assault, aggravated robbery, and human trafficking. What's hard about crime data is that there's so many different literal words that could be used to describe one crime, and those cases or those offense occurrences are filed in many different ways. So we've kind of compiled a lot of similar related words into larger categories, and you can always ask us, you can reach out to us. We have a contact form on our website if you want to know every single literal offense that is within our homicide category. But you can look at things like what court was that case heard in? What is the disposition of that case? Was there bond given in that case or in those kinds of cases? If so, how many were given? What amount of bond? You can look at for offense occurrences, which is really comes from police data.
Yeah.
You can look at that number, how many offense occurrences, how many homicides our police are saying there has been versus how many cases actually get filed, meaning that there's someone to assign to that crime and who's being charged with that crime. That number is going to be smaller.
Yeah.
And even we're working with kind of looking at some of the medical examiner's data, because usually the medical examiner's data has even more reports of homicide. So
Right.
medical examiner has more because someone might have gotten maybe shot or something, and taken to the hospital, and that was logged by law enforcement as an aggravated assault. Well, then they die in the hospital, so then that's marked as a homicide by the medical examiner. So you have a highest of medical examiner, then you have usually law enforcement. This is just a typical way that it goes. And then for cases filed, you have even less. And some of those cases may be dismissed. So you can also see our dismissal rates.
You're sort of making it, you're bringing public documents to folks in kind of a very easy, accessible way for them to access it.
Yes, and we have it in one way. That was kind of the original way that we presented this data when we launched the Glenda Gordy Research Center a couple of years ago. And along with our university crimes dashboards, we are completely revamping all of our existing dashboards to make them even more interactive and user-friendly. So we've worked really closely with a lot of community members who've given insight and input onto kind of the user experience, because we work in this field, so we think, oh, this makes total sense, but someone who doesn't work in this field,
it can be very confusing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're working very closely with lots of people, but we're thankful for everyone's input and for their interaction with our data. We've seen a huge increase in the usage of our dashboards this year.
To me, it's incredible all that you do, because it basically did start out being, hey, if you know who did this crime, call up and you might get a reward. And it's grown by leaps and bounds, basically. You all have done so much over there.
We're very proud. We have a very small but mighty, hardworking staff, and we have leaders who have great vision.
Yeah, Ronnie is very dedicated.
Yes,
very
Ronnie
dedicated.
is very dedicated. She has.
What's the best part about working at Crime Stoppers?
I would say the best part about working at Crime Stoppers is really, because I've worked in criminal justice fields for 7 years now, but the best part of my job is reaching a bigger population than what I was able to reach in the past. So again, I can average maybe like 3,000 kids per week.
Wow.
In the past, I had a caseload of maybe like 14 max and stuff like that. So being able to give these free preventative education to schools, to colleges, the communities, and all these things, it's very important to me, because I know I'm doing something good
you are.
and trying to, again, with our mission, solve and prevent serious crime.
And that's what you all are doing. And I know that Sydney would say the worst part about working at Crime Stoppers is having an office next to Andy Kahn.
He put little mice in my chair the other day.
He did. It was a whole debacle.
Why am I not surprised?
It was a whole debacle.
Hey, thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you all for watching. And remember to be kind to yourself and everyone else.